Hi, everybody. This is Asim Kapoor, founder and chief architect of Arc People Solutions, coming to you from the Rove Podcast studio in Rove Downtown in Dubai. Today's episode speaks to all those people out there who, during this time of pandemic, have found their passion and are well on their way to either being entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, coropreneurs, whatever you may want to call yourself, right? And let's face it, I mean, we are in entrepreneur heaven at the end of the day, right? Despite the challenges in the market, I think the kind of ecosystem that Dubai has been able to create to support entrepreneurship is absolutely awesome. Looking at some statistics, almost 42,000 new visas were, new business licenses were issued in 2020, of which 64% was for professional services. In 2021, just in Q1 itself, there were almost 16,000 business licenses that were issued already. And we all know about the freelancer visas that are also being issued. So, like I said, it is entrepreneur heaven, right? But I think what the question that we are here to explore is whether passion and subject matter expertise enough for somebody to become a successful entrepreneur. And to discuss that today, I have with me Ashwin Joshi. Ashwin Joshi comes from IIM Ahmedabad. He is the head of IIM Ahmedabad branch for Dubai, and he has been with them since 2013. Ashwin, welcome to the Arccast. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Asim. This is something that I've been looking forward to, so thank you so much for the invitation. A quick note about my experience. I've been with IMA since 2013. I relocated to Dubai in 2019 to set up the Dubai branch of the institute.
Right.
We currently focus on executive education only.
Right.
And the hope is once our branch is set up, we should be able to explore other facets that the institute gives to the ecosystem in India.
Right.
Prior to moving to Dubai, I was involved in a slightly different avatar in the institute. We
Right.
have a very strong business incubator and an accelerator.
Right.
And a big part of the work that we do there is to work with early stage entrepreneurs and founders and help them de-risk their business until such time that as they either make revenues or pick up early stage investment.
Right. Right.
So the last 8 odd years has been invested in really working with entrepreneurs at a ground level, helping them figure out their business strategies.
Right.
It has been an extremely fulfilling journey.
Right. Right.
So I'm very happy to talk to you on those
Yeah,
aspects.
no,
today.
and thank you very much for your time. And actually, to be honest with you, that is exactly, you hit the nail on the head in terms of what is it that we want to talk about today, right? Because, again, like I said, the environment for entrepreneurs is great over here, right? But what is it that makes somebody use that passion and become really successful as a business? And given the fact that your entire focus and your business expertise has been in getting businesses off the ground and getting them to reach a stage where they actually start generating revenue and start becoming successful, I think a lot of entrepreneurs out there would like to know what is it that makes that happen.
Sure. So I think before I jump into answering that particular question, I think
Yes.
we should take a step back and see where we are.
Yeah.
So we are in a place where entrepreneurship is celebrated. It's almost a badge of honor.
Right.
Not just GCC, across the world.
Right.
And not even 10 years ago, this
Right.
was a very, very different scenario.
Right.
So I remember when we did a lot of the entrepreneurship programs back home in India,
Right.
one of the biggest mandates for us was to help people realize that entrepreneurship is desirable and
Right.
it is okay to celebrate entrepreneurship.
Right.
I think a high context culture like in India or even in GCC, a failure in any venture was not looked upon, at least then,
Correct.
very favorably.
Correct.
So a lot of effort went into, and not just us, a whole lot of people. So there were multilateral organizations, venture funds,
Right.
even startup founders who have now created amazing companies that we all look up to,
Right.
were responsible in building this culture. And a result of that culture over the last 10, 15 years is what we see today, where people are completely okay. They are even thrilled to enter entrepreneurship.
Right. Right.
So I think that's the context with which we are looking at the ecosystem today.
Correct.
And given that, I think going back to your question, is passion and subject matter expertise enough? I think I personally, through my experience, like to think that the world conspires against, or the world conspires for you to maintain a status quo.
Right.
So if you look at it from this lens, you need to run to stay in the same position,
Sure.
given that it is so tough to change things.
Right.
Getting into entrepreneurship is completely an irrational act.
Right.
One needs a certain level of, I wouldn't say madness, but one level of leap of faith
Right.
to kick everything off into a completely uncharted territory.
Right.
Either through desire or people are compelled to do that, right?
Correct.
But that's where that passion, that X factor comes in.
Right.
And passion is absolutely necessary for you to build that courage to get into that uncharted waters.
Right.
And again, when you look at entrepreneurs, there are two segments of entrepreneurs, right?
Right.
One, you see a lot of early stage, very young kids right out of school, college,
Right.
starting entrepreneurship.
Correct.
At that age, one doesn't really have the liabilities that one has when you are in a mid-career or
Sure.
mid-30s to 40s, right?
Absolutely.
You have a good deal of time on your hands and also financial flexibility to even fail. So we have seen entrepreneurs who start at that stage,
Right.
start with ventures that may be totally unrelated to their experience. And let's be honest, they don't have enough subject matter experience when they graduate out of college.
Right. Right.
So
right.
it's okay to start any venture there.
Right. So, but for me, to be honest with you, I think the latter is what we are looking at right now, right? And I kind of really like the fact that you said that, okay, yes, passion is important because, I think there are always two thoughts around it, right? But yes, I guess that kickstart or that, that igniter or whatever you want to call it is your passion. But at the same time, I think a lot of the entrepreneurs, currently in this market perhaps are the ones that have been compelled to get into it because we were all conspired by the world, like you said, to be in that status quo of cushy jobs and things, our own comfort zones, and being in a corporate world and everything. And then as restructures and redundancies started coming in, a lot of people came out and then said, okay, now that I've been compelled to do that, let me find my passion and then go towards entrepreneurship, right? And whilst, yes, there is the experience that you say, right, and there is also financial flexibility, I think that may be to a certain extent and for a certain percentage of people, because at the end of the day, people have families, people have, responsibilities, you got to send kids to school, you got to put food on the table and, kind of a thing, right? And therefore, the pressure for any entrepreneurial venture also to turn around is fairly quick and everything, right? So that's the bit that I think I want to focus on and everything, because there'll be tons of people out there who are in a similar situation like this, right?
Sure.
Wouldn't you agree that? I mean, just based on your own timing here and everything, yeah.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head. A lot of the entrepreneur appeal, especially to people who have spent a certain amount of time in corporate environment,
right,
is on finding their freedom and finding their voice in the world.
Right.
While that's a great starting point, it's a great way to enter this particular journey.
Right.
It is not enough.
Right.
And especially so because there are so many variables in your life already. You may have kids, you may have bills to pay, etc.
Right.
It is necessary for one to sort of take a little more measured approach to entrepreneurship.
Right.
Because passion will burn out. Passion will burn out in 6 months to a year. If somebody is extremely passionate,
right,
they can fuel the passion for 2 years. Uske baad it just becomes a process.
Right. Right.
And therefore, what process you use becomes exceedingly important.
Right. Right. Right.
And I mean, love to discuss this in greater amount of
Yes,
detail.
yes, for sure. I mean, I think that is what, and from my own experience as well, right? And you've been a part of that journey also. I think we start off with the feeling that, okay, we know what the world needs, right?
Yeah.
Or we end up having a few discussions with a few people who we know of, or industry experts, or people who would be potential clients in the future, and you kind of share your idea, share your direction and everything, get some feedback. But at the end of the day, because I think it's fueled by passion, you already in your head have kind of a mindset or an understanding of what the world needs, which may not be the reality.
Correct.
And I think that's where that process that you kind of refer to is extremely critical. So if I think let's delve into that and see, like, I mean, so if you're also saying that, okay, we need to go through a process to support the passion, then how does one start off that journey?
So I think in any scenario, starting a business is never easy, right? You have that passion with you, great. You also at some level have certain endpoint in your mind.
Right.
You are passionate about a certain cause.
Right.
What is important to start doing, and I think this is a knee-jerk reaction. Every entrepreneur faces this.
Right.
And it is more of a bias that all of us have as entrepreneurs. We end up building a Taj Mahal in our mind.
Right.
So we have a sense of what our customers require. And we invest way too much time building a version of the product or a solution that we think that the customers will lap onto.
Right.
And a lot of times we end up spending way too much time within our heads, within our offices, to build that perfect version of a product. Where in fact the other way around is something that we need to work on, which is go to the customer as soon as you can.
Right.
Try to understand what they require. So ultimately, any business is really a solution that you are building.
Right.
So it's really a value exchange, that there is a set of values that your customers do value and they are ready to pay for.
Right.
Are you able to understand that value, and then are you able to build a solution that helps them get to their goal?
Right.
Your product is only a means.
Right.
So it's not so much of a product development journey, but a customer development journey.
Right.
And therefore, counterintuitively, I think the way to address this is to look at things the other way around. Look at it completely from a customer's lens.
Right.
And part of what you do is really then back integrate of what the customer needs, how do you provide that, and then build a solution around it.
Right. So is it, I mean, if I understand it correctly, is it about, let's say, identifying your core customer segment and then identifying the problem statement that you wish to solve? And the fact that there should be an existing problem statement which you solve or you add value to through your solution.
So that's a great question, right? Because it points to the type of company that you're building.
Right.
Now if you look at the type of ventures that are there might be innumerable types of companies that people have built.
Right.
But broadly, they would classify into two types of firms. One is companies that use revenue as their engine of growth.
Right.
Where you are built from day one.
Right.
To create a revenue, which
Right.
means you're exploiting an existing opportunity.
Right.
The other set of firms are companies that want to punch much higher, and they are trying to build a new market.
Right.
Which in some sense are the companies that get VC funded, because a lot of the funding flows to companies that are actually carving out new market spaces.
Right.
So when you look at business or early stage venturing from these two lenses, if you are really thrilled about monetizing an existing opportunity, you really don't have to work very hard to build a market. The nuances and the capabilities that you need to have is to figure out which market you need to be a part of.
Right.
Is there an established demand? Is there a pull already?
Right.
And what can we deliver better than the others?
Right.
Because there is a demand, there will be competition. That the
Correct.
focus is really how do you differentiate yourself?
Right. Right. Yeah.
If you are a startup entrepreneur who's building into a new market,
Right.
let's say you were the first guy who built a cloud kitchen, or you were the first person who entered a garage aggregator. There the focus is much more on how do you sort of make the market viable, because the number of people who require a solution is a very, very tiny percentage.
Right.
And there a lot of efforts is in educating these customers.
Right. Right.
So your question is how do you actually make sense of it? Really boils down to which type of business are you looking at. When I look back and think about Arc, it was the first type where you know that there is an existing demand.
Right.
You know that you have the capabilities, you and your team,
Right.
to deliver a much sharper, much more relevant solution.
Right.
And that's where we really navigated to.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, going into a completely new market where, let's say, you said competition will be less, but you got to work hard in actually, educating your customer and getting them to see things from a different perspective and making them feel that there is a need for the solution that you're kind of bringing in. Are the two journeys like very, very different, or would an entrepreneur still follow similar kind of rules for it, right? Because the way I'm looking at it, going a few maybe a year back or something, perhaps one should focus more on finding something that doesn't exist and create it. Yes, there's more challenges, but you know that there will be lesser competition. Vis-a-vis jumping into a place where there is tons of competitors already, the red ocean, blue ocean kind of mindset and everything, right? So is there any kind of a formula that drives that business strategy, or then it all boils down to your original passion?
Okay, what a great question. Let me pause for a minute to think about. So the question is there a formula to figure out where do you need to go?
Yes.
And are we talking about, is there a formula to figure out whether you want to go in the revenue side or the blue ocean side?
Correct.
So that there is no formula there, right? So there, I think it really boils down to what you as an individual are passionate about.
Right.
it also is a big viability question of how much finance are you ready to forego.
Sure.
Because you don't have, if you are going into a completely nascent market, you may not be able to make revenues and sustain yourself. Therefore, your financial sustainability will eventually at some point be made by getting external investors.
Right.
If you have the appetite for that kind of risk, for sure get into that market because the upside is very high.
Right.
So it's a very high risk, high return market.
Right.
If you go on the other side, you may have competition, but you can survive easily. Or I wouldn't say easily. You may have a better survival rate.
Right.
But then you've got a limited market for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what would be that step-by-step approach? So one kind of,
So essentially, I think if you let's say that you have a particular startup idea in mind,
right,
and you wish to take the next. So you've got amazing amount of passion. You've made a commitment that for the next 2 years, I'm going to go on my startup journey, and you need to start the process. So the first, I think this is not a sequential set of activities. These are islands of things that you need to think about.
Right.
And these islands will come based on your experience with life.
Right.
But essentially, there are a bunch of things that needs to be thought about. So first is really understanding the customer at a deeper level.
Right.
Now, the good thing that this entire startup revolution over the past decade or so has thrown up is there are a lot of strategy and tactical frameworks that are free, available on YouTube, available on Google, and you can actually use these to clarify your thinking.
Right.
So the approach that we use is we try to essentially use a very scientific method, and the crux of the method is anything that you think about your startup is at the end of the day a hypothesis.
Right.
It is an idea that you have in mind which is not validated.
Right.
So then the approach is how do you create your hypothesis about different facets of your business, and you literally write those down on an Excel sheet or on a piece of paper, and you cycle between phases of you brainstorming what you think about that particular idea.
Right.
And then going out into the market,
Right.
testing it with your customers, and
Right.
then coming back and seeing whether that makes sense.
Right.
So it's in some sense, it's a very cyclical and iterative process.
Sure. So it's like create a hypothesis, do the brainstorm and everything,
Yeah.
validate it, come back again,
Precisely,
and then redo
yeah.
and everything.
And then you do that with each part of your
Each
business.
part
So
of-
the
right.
first part of the business might be, do I know enough about my customers'
Right.
value needs?
Right.
So it's not about what product they need, but what value do they need?
Right.
That itself is a process. Then you start, then the second part is, do we know enough about the value proposition that they require from a product?
Right.
The third part is, do we know enough about the business model of what we are trying to do?
Right.
Which means it is now not just the customer outcomes, not just the value proposition, but also does my financial engine work?
Right.
Again, bunch of hypotheses there.
Right.
Then the next part is, do we have the workflow to create the right kind of customer experience?
Right.
That is another set of tools that you use.
Right.
The final piece is, do I have the ability to create the unit economics in a way
Right.
which create profits for me?
Right.
So these are almost 4 to 5 different frameworks. If you don't mind, let me quickly take your listeners through each of these frameworks.
Right.
Yeah. So the first one, framework that we usually use with startup is you can either start by narrowing down your customer segments, which we did in the
Right.
brainstorming session
Right.
we had.
Right.
So essentially, it's really about brainstorming the customer segments and then figuring out which one to go.
Right.
We typically, Excel is a great tool. You also use a very quantitative process to do that by
Right.
figuring out which segment, what are the parameters, how would you evaluate each segment.
Right.
The second tool that you typically come across is design thinking. That
Right.
was built by a design school at Stanford or IDEO.
Right.
So these two segments help you get very close to the customer, know who your customer persona is.
Right. Sorry. So when you said qualitatively,
Yeah.
so it's qualitatively you look at by assigning kind of a number to them, or kind of rating people or your customer segments in, let's say, level of importance of or viability, let's say. So I kind of come up with my own scale on a 0 to 10. 0 is not viable, 10 is highly viable customer for me, and then I start allocating whether it's sectors, whether it's industries or whatever to that scale.
So if you don't mind, I'll pull up the example that we did with
Right,
you.
right.
So we knew that ARC was to address multiple segments, and
Right.
the first thing that we all did was we spent roughly about an hour,
Right.
and we brainstormed all the possible segments that you could go to.
Correct.
And we had a list of around 31 segments.
Right,
Of course,
right.
none of them, not all the 31 would be useful.
Right.
But that's the process. You
Correct.
don't eliminate any options.
Right,
So I
right.
think roughly, if you spend roughly half an hour to 1 hour, you'll get a good list of the customer segments that you
Right.
could possibly talk to.
Correct.
And you put that on rows on an Excel sheet. On the column side, you start figuring out how do you evaluate whether each segment is good.
Right.
In our case, we almost did we came up with around 8 dimensions to evaluate each of these segments. So
Correct.
we looked at, is the customer segment accessible to me? Are we familiar with the customer segment? Is there enough business volume here? Is the market growth enough? Is there high revenue per order? Is there a good margin here? And
Right.
then ultimately, is there, how competitive is this space?
Right.
So each of these variables are factors that we use.
Right.
And I think what I remember, we also add a percentage weight to it.
Correct.
Right.
But these were and please remind me because it was quite some time back. These are not like defined through some management guru formula or a management book formula. It's something that we defined ourselves, what we felt was right, or
Absolutely. So I think it really needs to come from the entrepreneur, because as an entrepreneur, you know what you want to chase.
right.
And therefore, the question really is a very simple question. Given these customer segments, who would you want to target?
Target,
And
right.
which makes business sense for
Right.
you?
Right.
So
Correct.
now, if you are an entrepreneur who is building a revenue-based company where you
Right.
want to make revenue,
Right.
you may want to focus on the margin, the revenue per order, the
Right.
market size,
Right.
etc.
Right. But as an entrepreneur, to be honest, who has all that passion and
Yeah.
the subject matter expertise,
Yeah.
I may not know on what dimensions to actually come up and create this customer segmentation template, right? So can people can people look at some places? Are there, other tools that are available that help them kind of a thing? Because I had you.
Yeah.
Not everybody will have you.
No, I think
to kind of identify that, right?
So in fact, I would like to differ here.
Yeah.
What we created
Yeah.
was what essentially was in your head.
Right.
Right. So
Okay.
this was your thinking algorithm anyway.
Right.
You just needed somebody to sound off.
Right.
And I think most of the times, the biggest challenge is not in actually following a framework.
Right.
When you are too close to the problem,
Yeah.
you don't have an objective look at it.
Correct.
So even if you are getting a group of well-wishers and friends around who you can brainstorm with,
Right.
that helps you do that.
Right.
But yes, I think there are these tools. So again, the tools that I was referring to
Right.
earlier.
Right.
You've got the design thinking, you've
Right.
got the customer segmentation tools, value proposition tools, business model canvas tools. These all exist.
Right.
If you Google them, and what I would do is I'll give a list of these tools which
Yes.
we can upload on your website.
Great. Great.
And people can just click and take a look.
Understood.
All of these are freely available.
Free level.
Yeah.
All right, great. So, I mean, it was an interesting journey for me as well, right? But I think one of the biggest thing I zeroed in on was how to articulate
Yeah.
what my that specific the proposition that I bring to the table, I bring to the market, right? Because again, I think as any other person who's passionate about what they do, being too close to it, we have all these ideas in our heads and everything, but how do I articulate it in a way that a potential customer can understand what value I will add and what differentiation I bring?
Right.
Is always a big challenge, right? How do you go about doing that? How do you kind of distill it down to that core proposition?
So I think an example would be much easier. So I'll again switch back to what we did.
Sure,
And I'll
sure.
try to go in some level of detail.
Right.
And please feel free to stop me if it goes too deep.
Right.
So I think I remember the first thing that we did, and we spent maybe 2 to 3 hours, was really to create that list of customer segments across so many
Yes.
variables.
Right.
I think we spent 3 hours. After the end of 3 hours, we had a good list of 11 or 12 customer segments.
Right.
So that is the first step, because see, ultimately a value proposition is a communication or an articulation of what value you're going to provide to your customer.
Correct.
So value proposition has 2 parts to it. One is, what does your customer value? And then how do you provide what they value better than the others?
Right.
These are
Right.
2 parts.
Right.
Which means you need to know who you're talking to.
Correct.
And therefore the first natural step is you figure out your customer segments, have a very clear idea of who you're talking to, why. So first, once you finish the Excel magic to get your 12 or 13 segments,
Sure.
identify maybe one, start with that, because
Right.
it is easy to start with one and then repeat the process for every segment.
Right.
What we then did is we started figuring out, if this is my segment, what is the end goal of the customer? Why are they even trying to reach out to us, or what are they doing? Why?
Right.
What is it that they want to achieve?
Right.
And I know we came out with a list of very idealistic ideas, but what really made it very practical is we also married that with your ambition.
Right.
And I think the question that really triggered this clarity is, in 5 years, what tangible difference does Aseem need to make? And I think that's what got all of us thinking, okay, what are we really onto here?
Right. Right.
And a lot of times what I realize is when you do your brainstorming, if you add an element of time or scale, let's say you extrapolate to the next 10 years or maybe 10x higher,
Right.
it really helps you bring yourself back to the core purpose that you are there with.
Right. Right.
So that was the second thing that we did, to really map out the goals of your customers with what you as an entrepreneur are passionate about.
Right. Right. Right.
And then the third thing is we really had a good view on their competitors. We did a good research on their websites.
Right. Right.
And we identified maybe around 6 or 7 dimensions on which all of you compete.
Right.
So there was the programs that you use in HR transformation, the product range that you have. Maybe some of them talk about, hey, we customize the whole thing for you.
Right.
Then some of your competitors also use their reputation, thought leadership. Some of them use data experts.
Right.
So these were 7 to 8 dimensions across which all the competitors compete.
Right.
And that gave us a good view. So the third thing that you do, so again, first is you clarify your customer segments. Second, really go deep into why your customers are doing it.
Right.
And does it marry to your vision as an entrepreneur?
Right.
Third is who are your competitors and what factors or dimensions are they competing against?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And then that really gives you a good sense of who you're talking to and what value can you carve out.
Right.
And that's, I think we used a Blue Ocean framework called the ERRC.
Yes.
That
correct.
given these dimensions, are people emphasizing this? Are they not emphasizing this? And what can we do to what is ERRC? ERRC is what can we eliminate? What can we reduce? What can we raise and what can we create?
Right.
So this is this is done with a view on the competition.
Right, right. My only, and I mean, it was a brilliant process to have gone through, and I think, we went through it over various workshops and all. My only issue, which I think a lot of people, especially when they're coming out of the corporate world and everything, and entrepreneurship is new to us, is just the feeling on the thing that, okay, we are doing this all as a desktop exercise. And how valid is, the assumptions that we are making is always a bit of a question mark, right?
Correct.
So how can one kind of, get more, let's say, comfortable with the fact that, okay, whatever hypothesis, I know you said validation, but this was a huge exercise. How much of validation can I really do, or how can I go about that?
So it depends on what you wish to validate, right?
Right.
So validating a value proposition is much easier compared to validating a business model.
Right.
And each hypothesis has its own level of depth.
Right.
So one easy way to, nothing is easy in business. So one quicker way to validate, let's say we have as an entrepreneur, your job was to build a value proposition that sticks.
Right.
Once you have that value proposition, which we see on your website right now, and Complicate to Transform, you might have actually created a few small pitch decks.
Right.
So building a PowerPoint deck, a 10-slider PowerPoint deck doesn't take too much.
Right.
If you send it to, let's say, 10 of your potential customers,
Right.
It's very easy to figure out. If you build some internal metrics to figure out if this sticks, my customer will do A, B, C.
Right.
That might be either reach out to me or call and say, hey, Asim, this is great.
Right.
So figure out how it resonates with you. So these are small tests.
Right.
And each hypothesis that you have can have its unique test.
Right. Right.
But it is very important to sort of quickly finish your hypothesis building and then test it out with the customer, because you can invest unlimited time in making it perfect.
Right.
Can you
sure.
would you want to share what you did as a testing process?
No, so for me, I mean, to be honest with you, this is exactly what I did, right? I mean, we had the deck prepared immediately afterward, which I think I bounced off you as well. And then I got some inputs and everything, and then I kind of sent it out, right? And then, yes, based upon the responses and everything, continued to tweak. But I also, I think, learned through that process was the fact that you should not wait for something to be absolutely perfect to take it out to the market, because it will somehow never be absolutely perfect. You will always want to do some changes or tweaks and everything, right? So I think for me, that's something that came up. So let's say, it's somebody who, a person recently lost their job, have gone into wanting to be an entrepreneur, have started putting things on paper. What 3 key takeaways would you give a person like that, so that they're able to come up with a clear proposition, for what they want to do?
That's a tough one. I think before we speak about the 3 takeaways, it's also important to internalize and ask this question: are you ready for the entrepreneurial journey?
Right.
A lot of times when we are forced to be on an entrepreneurial path, it seems all hunky-dory from a distance.
Right.
But it is a huge investment, commitment and grit that one requires.
Right.
And it's never a 1 year journey. It's always a 2 to 3 year journey at minimum.
Right.
So assuming that you've got the ability, the flexibility to do that, great, you've signed up. Once you've signed up, I think the first thing, and I think the first takeaway I would say is really, really get to know your customers more. And it is very easy to say that, hey, I can serve the entire gamut of customers. When I say get to know your customers better, it's really laser focus and figure out who the first customer segment is. So while a lot of the startup gyan out in the world talks about focus, I think more important than focus is sequencing.
Right.
You can serve multiple customer segments, but who's the first one that you're ready to serve?
Right.
I think getting down to that level of detail, if you are able to write down the names of 10 customers, I think you're good.
Right.
So that's the first takeaway.
Right.
Once you do that, I think really, again, spend more time understanding what they require,
Right.
who their customers are. And a lot of times when we start businesses in areas that we don't know,
Right.
understanding the value chain and cost structure of the business is very, very important.
Right.
So a lot of entrepreneurs who tend to succeed, who start in their mid ages, are the guys who start in the domain that they already are in.
Right. Correct.
Because you inherently know the cost structure,
Right.
you know how it works.
Correct.
You don't have to learn to do business and learn the market.
Right. Right. Correct.
So again, people who are in the journey, better to start the business in the market that you already know. So you only spend the time learning about how do you do a business, not spend time learning the market.
Great.
And the third part is, again, go out as much as your office as possible. Rather than investing a huge amount of time in building a product, throw people at the problem. Identify a problem, solve it.
Right.
You don't need a product to get started. You start the operations,
Right.
throw people at the problem, and then gradually build product on the side.
Right. No, that's brilliant.
yeah.
Brilliant. No, thanks a lot for your time, Ashwin. I think it was really insightful, and I think in that short half an hour we were able to put in a lot together, right? And I think for all those who are listening in, I hope through this brief interaction that we've had with Ashwin and a kind of an insight into how I went about my journey with ARC, which is still continuing and everything in terms of positioning myself as an entrepreneur, positioning my business in the right way, you would find some inspiration and you would find some level of detail to take away. And if you do need to get more details, please get in touch with us. Like Ashwin said, we will put up the necessary details in the bio and everything. But I do hope that it helps you along in your journey as well. Like I said, please make the most of this awesome environment and this awesome ecosystem for entrepreneurship, and let's make a difference. Thank you very much.